Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
Joining me here at the studio in Tech Town, a troika, three very interesting people that we're going to talk about today and talk about a great subject, well, booze, drinking, having fun in Detroit, but also a place that's I enjoy greatly, Kiesling and Milwaukee Caffe. That is in the Milwaukee Junction neighborhood just outside of New Center, a place that I have been so glad to see kind of put their flag and do some amazing stuff on their corner. Why don't I introduce everybody before we get into it? To my left, Ashley Davidson, the co-owner of Kiesling and Milwaukee Caffe. Welcome to Daily Detroit.
Thank you, Jer. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Jonny Brill, general manager of Kiesling and Milwaukee.
Jer, a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then Allison Everitt, bar manager of Kiesling.
Hey, Jer. Thanks so much for having us.
Of course, of course. So I'm going to warn people ahead of time. There are buckets on our table. There is ice. Glued isn't the right word because that's not the proper term. What is the proper term when ice sticks to glass? You're the bar people. Is there a term?
It is frozen.
Yeah,
it's frozen.
Near frozen. So this is coming out of our 6-degree chiller. Yes, we wanted to serve it extra chilled for you, Jer, and we've been a little neurotic lately about very chilled glassware, very chilled drinks. So,
well, 6-degree chiller tells me everything I need to know about where this conversation's about to go. So let's talk about Kiesling. Ashley, maybe you're the one to start with this. What's a little bit of the history behind it? It's a very cool old building on a corner. There aren't that many of those that are activated in the way that you have really put a lot of care into. And so people know there's Kiesling the bar, which is most of the ground level space. There is Milwaukee Caffe, kind of like a coffee window. And then there's residential upstairs, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And so how'd that all come together?
The bar itself, the building was built in the 1890s, and it became a tavern and a dry goods store for the local neighborhood, which of course includes the piquette plant, the old creamery, which has been closed for a long time. A lot of different blue-collar jobs were in that neighborhood, and it was predominantly German initially. By the time we got it, it had been abandoned for certainly over a decade, I think closer to 2 decades. My business partner, Carlo, he's a developer. He had found the building, and at that point, it was just like a white space inside. So a lot of scraping, a lot of sandblasting. We bootstrapped it and did a lot of work by hand, uncovered these amazing murals inside, which are like the 4 seasons of the Black Forest or something.
So it stuns me for you to talk about being a white space inside, because when you walk into Kiesling, it feels like a corner of Detroit that's never been touched. It's great.
It's been touched.
Oh, it's been touched.
Yes.
So you discovered all that stuff, or a lot of that.
Yeah, it was amazing. And then bringing the space back to life, it could have just been a standard white space bar, but those murals, when we discovered those and started finding other pieces from other bars that had been closed that we could bring in, and then brought in this wallpaper, which is, I know that sounds like a really weird thing to point out, but the wallpaper...
My audience is here for the nerdery, so all the way in.
Excellent. So the wallpaper was screen pressed, essentially, screen printed sheet by sheet and hand pasted to the walls and the ceilings. And it's of that era when the bar was initially built. We reinforced the terrazzo floors, which had collapsed. There was no back patio. There was no, you remember the adjacent space when it was just a subfloor and raw space. So we couldn't build that out until we started in 2019, building that out. And also Milwaukee Caffe, which is a 200 square foot espresso bar.
The cafe is actually smaller than the studio.
Yes, it is.
But wonderfully designed. It makes me very happy. And in fact, it was my lifeline to the world. I would walk my dog up to the window because it was the only place I felt like I could be somewhat normal. It was absolutely fabulous to have that window there.
Oh, I love that. A lifesaver. I love that. It was a lifesaver for us to have that window. And so we designed it with a cantilevered window prior to the pandemic. And we were supposed to open it in March of 2020. The world had other plans. So being able to pop that window open and still serve cocktails and open the coffee shop and just make a thing for people during that time was incredible.
Now, how has it been bootstrapping a lot of this stuff? Because you've done this in phases, and like I see kind of two ways of development in Detroit. Either like we're going to do it, we're going to do all the way, all at once, or I call it the Indian Village remodel because that's how my grandmother remodeled her house, room by room, with a plastic like between the doors. Like, what are some of the things that you've learned doing this?
Oh God, what have I not learned?
Maybe let's start with what did you think you knew that you learned different?
I actually went into this knowing that I did not know a lot. And that's been really helpful because I studied architecture and urban planning in college. I know place. I know design. I then became a documentarian and a storyteller marketer. I know how people relate story to place. I know great cocktails. I don't make them. I know people who make great cocktails. So a huge part of it was finding people who did things better than me, who knew things more than I did. Those are still a lot of the things I don't know. I know how to find people who know it better than I do. And I think the hardest part is finding the very best people and then just empowering them and collaborating with them, getting behind them. And that has been the thing that I've learned the most about.
I think that's a key leadership trait because at the end of the day, we can do nothing ourselves. I think when I watch people who are really overstressed or really sinking, it's because they're doing too much themselves, because at the end of the day, like, it does take a village and everything you get is from other people. And I know that some people don't like to hear that, but I think it's really true because there's so much that has to be done on a daily basis and you can't know everything. And I think this gives me a great opportunity to talk to Jonny and Allison, who I'm assuming fit that bill.
They do.
They just met me right now, Jer, actually. So
pulled off of Woodward Avenue.
Exactly, yeah.
You were just out there with buckets of ice right there at Woodward in Amsterdam looking for the queue line.
I'm just a big fan, that's all. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Jonny, how did you come to this? To bartending in Kiesling?
I had a life before bartending, did a little work for the music industry, worked on Capitol Hill for a minute, and then I'm originally from the West Coast.
I wondered why. I thought that I felt like you were going to talk to me about a bill or something.
That comes after we record the show.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am going to the policy conference.
That's right, yes.
Later.
No, I'm very excited about that. Also a long-time listener. I just want to point that out. And, Devin O'Reilly is no longer banned from Kiesling. I just let him know, please. But before this, I really learned bartending in Nashville. It was a town that was really growing and booming, a big hospitality scene. Learned a lot there. I was there for about 9 years and then moved up to Detroit about 5 years ago. Happened to run into Allison, who was bar manager at the time, and sort of the rest is history. Just want to say that bartending in Detroit is the greatest place I've ever bartended. The people are wonderful here. And I definitely tell everybody in other cities that I've been to that this is the place to be to bartend. People are absolutely fantastic.
What specifically about like the Kiesling crowd or the building or the vibe that really calls to you? Because you seem like the kind of guy who could work anywhere.
Thank you. I think in contrast to a tourist town, which Nashville is, you get a lot of really cool people coming in, but you don't really get to make the connections. Kiesling is a place where first night I started, people were saying, "Who are you? I want to get to know you." You build these relationships. People are genuinely interested in who you are here. It's not a quick transaction. And you really get to know people here. And people are genuinely kind. And it makes bartending in Detroit, and particularly Kiesling, really, really wonderful.
Well, to me, Detroit has always been a community. And part of being a community is you're expected to know people and put your shoulder to the wheel.
Yes.
You know? Allison, how about you?
Well, I don't have nearly as cool of a story as Jonny here, but I've lived in Michigan my whole life. And I learned how to bartend when I was going to college in a very small city of Mount Pleasant. And long story short, I threw away that
chips.
degree. Yeah.
Fire up chips. That's what it is. Producer Cheyenne will be very happy she's a fellow
Cool.
chip.
Fire up chips. I fell in love with it immediately and eventually threw away my degree to do this full time. I worked in Ann Arbor for a really long time. And then after about a 5-year stint there, I moved to Detroit. And one of the reasons was because I had all this experience in smaller markets, and I just, had felt like I had kind of hit my limit in, Ann Arbor. And Detroit has been amazing for me. It's opened a lot of doors. I never dreamed that I would turn this job into a viable career, and doing some of the things that we're getting to do now. I attribute that a lot to moving to Detroit and being a part of the scene here. It's been awesome.
That's one of the things I think people forget is that, especially here in Detroit, hospitality is a true career in many ways, and you can make a lot of opportunities. I asked him about it. What about it, Kiesling, for you sets it apart?
Kiesling was my favorite bar before I started working there. I've been there about 3 years, but prior to that, Kiesling was known as being like the service industry watering hole. And they were always really good at like curating events and different gatherings curated towards the service industry, which was something that at the time we were really lacking. And I think that Kiesling was kind of like one of the first to really start doing things like takeovers and, having barbecues on their patio with people that were trying to proof a concept of their own, chefs that we just knew from being peers. And, then growing and seeing those same chefs open their own brick and mortars, that was a really cool component to a bar. And I wanted to be a part of that.
So, Ashley, that leads me to think and ask you, it is unique, and it was unique at the time to do these pop-ups and things. Why did you think, hey, this is something that, I want to allow and happen in my space?
The whole point of the space is it is a neighborhood bar with something for everyone. So when you think about what is the neighborhood and how is it changing and how do I help? How do I support it without taking over, right? Or imposing a vision on that area that existed long before any of us were alive, right? Thinking about that, it's partially how do you structure a menu, high-low, so you have various price points, you cover a number of tastes. Also, how do you introduce cocktail culture in an approachable way to some people? And then also provide cocktail culture to other people who are already familiar. How do you make it an equally comfortable space there? So kind of writing the brief, right? And then how do you make this a space where everyone feels comfortable and like they're taken care of? And who do we need to take care of? Who's not being taken care of? Who are the people who take care of everyone else? It just writes itself almost when you start thinking about it in that way. You design a place that should feel like the living room to the city. People want to hang out there. You give creative range to the menu, and it's a nice place and there's a relaxed vibe. People want to work there. You're still structuring boundaries, right? But you're doing it in a way where people are inputting their own vision into the space. And to me, all of the greatest bars, any kind of community hub, any third space, that's how it works. It's like, there's the establishment itself, but it's totally flexible it's a conversation with the community. It's not a monologue. Community, very importantly, including the staff, featuring the staff, I would say.
So, and this is a question for any one of you three. How do you bridge that cocktail culture? Because that is something that I hear from people, because we love to talk about cocktails on Daily Detroit. But there are a lot of people who have privately messaged me or emailed me going, I don't know what to do. I'm kind of intimidated. Or is cocktail culture only for me if I'm going to spend a lot of money? Or all these other things where there's this belief that, or this fear of like, this isn't for me. And one of the nice things about Kiesling, one of the things I remember right off the bat was like the shot and a beer special, right? Something very simple like High Life and a shot, which is like ye old dive bar pairing, right? But how do you bridge that and make people feel welcome? Because there is kind of a stigma to parts of cocktail culture. I hear the jokes about like, oh, well, your overalls and your handlebar mustache, like all that stuff. But that misses the point to me,
I mean, we actively work against that aesthetic of the handlebar apron look. I think we employ some very high-level techniques, modern techniques to cocktail creation, but we don't hit people over the head with it. I think when people do, sometimes it can feel a little self-aggrandizing. We want to just present it as is. People can enjoy it. We're happy to nerd out about cocktails, but we love our beer and shot drinkers just as much as we love our menu cocktail drinkers, our classic cocktail drinkers. I think we also realize that not everyone comes to a cocktail bar to talk about cocktails. They have their own lives. They want to relax and unwind. And I think Ashley has done a really great job creating a space where people can feel comfortable. But I encourage anyone to come in. If they feel a little intimidated, come in early in the week, sit down, talk with one of our bartenders. They're happy to walk you through the menu. Any classic, they're happy to come out of their back pocket and create something a la minute for you, just, plucked out of thin air, so.
Something that we've always really focused on from a management side of things is instilling great hospitality. And I think that is really what bridges that gap. If you're hospitable and you are thinking of the guests that you're talking to in that moment and you can kind of read them, to offer to walk through the menu with them, to ask, let me know if you have any questions, to give a suggestion on some of our best sellers. Those just things that come naturally when you really care about the guest experience. And that's something that we've really been trying to be consistent with.
I think that's also part and parcel of this is your all's career. This is your actual passion into it. It isn't just, hey, I'm going to work here for a few weeks and then off and go. I wonder if you notice that at all in the difference between the places that you've bartended before, right? Because you worked in college towns. That's the definition of transient.
Yeah, definitely. And back then I wasn't making cocktails when I was bartending in that college town. It was a totally different style of bartending, and something that I really appreciate about the service industry and about bartending specifically is that you can take it down whatever path you want. If you want to be a dive bartender, it's there for you, and it's cool in its own way. It's fast paced. You get to know your regulars super well. You can still be creative and come up with a cool new shot or something that they're going to love. Or you can go the more nerdier route, be totally focused on cocktails. The cool thing about Kiesling is that it's kind of a hybrid where we get super high volume on the weekends. So you need to have kind of those dive bar skills, be able to turn people quick. But at the same time, you need to have the knowledge and the experience to make a really good cocktail. So it's kind of a cool place because you get to flex all of those things.
It may betray something about me, but I prefer to drink during the week.
Yeah.
And in part, it's due to that.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
because I'm not that kind of person. Well, I mean, I have a record, but I'm not that kind of person who's like, okay, let's do 10 drinks and go all the way in. Let's do 1 or 2. Let's have a great time. And I feel like, that it's just easier to do that in those kinds of situations. You know what I mean? So before we get into this pair of buckets, I want to go around. I know I didn't prep you for this, but first thing that you're ordering anywhere you go, Ashley.
What the staff is most proud of.
Okay.
I'm going for the most expensive menu cocktail, Jared. That's what I'm going for.
And then you're expensing it to Ashley.
100%. Yes. Sorry about that, boss.
For me, it's a Negroni. I love that classic cocktail, and I think it tells me everything I need to know about that bar and if I'm ordering correctly,
Excellent. Because that's the kind of drink that if they screw it up, something's off the mark. I feel that way about the old fashioned.
Yeah.
Because the old fashioned is a deceptively simple drink, but so many places screw up the old fashioned.
Totally.
Yep.
And I know right away if they're close, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go in other things. If it tastes like a syrup bottle, then we know we've gone amiss.
Totally.
So I find that to be a really good drink. And I would use the Negroni as well. I feel like that's an even deeper cut, but you're obviously much more into this stuff than I am. I feel like I should try the Negroni test. That's a whole nother level of test.
Yes.
So what do we have in the buckets?
We brought to you two of our favorite cocktails on the menu currently. We have a Gibson. This is our caramelized Gibson. Typical Gibson is a gin martini that's garnished with a cocktail onion. We took it to a crazy level and combined gin and a bunch of caramelized onions. We clarify it through a culinary centrifuge. This just removes the solids and produces a really flavor concentrated liquid. And then we add a little bit of sherry to it and garnish it with this home pickle brined cocktail onion.
Wow.
Super savory, definitely for your more savory drinkers, but delicious. And then next we have the margarita coated. We flip the menu twice a year. And for the last couple of years, we've done a clarified margarita variation on draft. Tequila has been super hot the last couple of years. And so we always make sure that we make a fast pour for our tequila drinkers, especially going back to serving high volume.
Well, and it's proof that you do not need to rely on just a couple kinds of drinks for fast service, right? A draft cocktail well done can really be great.
Totally. And we are really proud of our draft cocktails. And I think sometimes there is a little bit of education with customers to reassure them that this isn't some like something that's been batched forever ago and has lost any of its
If you're
fluff.
a cocktail drinker, part of the thing is that you don't want the mass produced thing, right? Like that's kind of part of the whole vibe.
Right. But the truth is, like with this cocktail, there's a lot of labor and love that goes into it so that you can have it at speedy, quick service on the other side of the bar. This one is basically inspired by green curry. It has a lot of Thai flavors, lemongrass, Thai basil, coconut, ginger, red chili, agave lime. We're really excited to pour you some of these.
Yeah, we're going to be spreading our wings here. I love this. All right.
Shall we?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, cheers. Cheers, everybody.
So let's talk about this one. You went with first
This is the margarita coated.
Okay.
Yep.
Very nice. Very
Thank
nice. And I'm not even usually a margarita person. This is good.
Yeah.
There is just this clarity to it. Obviously the ice cube, but like all of it adds like a certain vibe to it.
Totally. Part of that process, we use protein clarifications. In this instance, we're using coconut milk to clarify it. Part of that whole process is rounding everything out. It's concentrating flavors, but also taking away tannins or any astringency that you get sometimes from acids or other products you're working with, which creates this really like juicy, smooth, easy, crushable drink.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that right away. When you're thinking about your menu, do you think about it in like slots that you need to fill, or like how do you think about developing a menu?
So like I said, we flip twice a year. So a big part of us, like our process, is seasonality. We always want to use products that we can get through the next 6 months. And if we can't, we have to get creative and think of ways to make them shelf stable. I mean, from my perspective, it is about filling slots, but something unique with our program is that I let everybody contribute to it. All of our bartenders are allowed to submit drinks and work with me on the R&D process and, dialing it in. So sometimes I don't start drinks until that's all finished and I just have to plug in slots. But things like the margarita coated, that is something that we just know that's how tequila is trending right now. It's just increasing in popularity. And so we know, well, we should definitely have a fast pour tequila option.
R&D season is definitely my Christmas. We get to sit here and try upwards of 40 drinks, just tons of submissions.
Does your liver ever write help me notes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mine does. Yes.
It's hard tasting. This is what a tough life we have, Jerry. It's hard tasting that many submissions at once. We try to split it up a little bit.
So
but
do you think of like, if somebody comes in, do you want to make sure there's a drink that's for sweet, a drink that's for savory? Do you think in those kind of terms, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we want to cover a lot of bases. We definitely want to hit our agave drinkers with tequila, with mezcal. We love our sort of brown spirit drinkers, a lot of bourbons. We have a great Manhattan Riff right now. We love our low ABV drinkers. Great for summer, great early afternoon and, early in the week. We have a great like Pim's Cup right now. This Justino is definitely for our adventurous drinkers, our seasoned drinkers. I think each menu, too, Allison, is really cognizant about introducing a new cocktail technique to employ. So we're always building on sort of the last round. Flash blending was a big thing on the last menu and current menu. And we're doing...
What's flash blending?
We use a Hamilton Beach to whip and aerate really quickly over some crushed ice. And just yields...
I just don't want to leave listeners out there.
Yeah,
No,
totally.
Of course. Yeah, sorry. We're getting a little technical here, but...
Yeah,
that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Hamilton Beach is like, if you think of like an old diner, like milkshake.
Yeah.
That's
mixer.
fun.
And that just creates, again, like a nicely aerated, perfectly diluted cocktail, ice cold cocktail, really fast without any shaking, right?
Yeah. And, this menu, this Justino that our lead bartender, Mikey Leonard, came up with, it's a real technical feat. This is being spun at, 4,000 times the weight of gravity. It's really, really wonderful. It's really the facsimile of an onion. When I first tried it, I was blown away. So
Yeah. And that's a cocktail that's been in the works for years. And that's something that, again, is unique to our team and our program, is that we have a combined level of hospitality experience that isn't so common anymore. All of our bartenders are pretty well vetted and cocktail focused. So doing menus is like really fun for me because it is so collaborative.
Right, and you're working with other people who know what they're talking about,
Exactly,
right? You're not having to bring people up to speed constantly.
Only me.
That's got to be part of the fun of it, though, right?
It 100% is. I love R&D season. I love hearing the conversations, and then I'm like the dumb kid in the room that's like, what is that?
All right, I have this other one here. This, again, is...
The caramelized Gibson.
Okay, so how am I supposed to consume here with the
It's
onion?
honestly whatever you're feeling, whatever your heart desires. If you want to take a sip and then eat the onion, I would probably do that myself.
Okay. I do as I'm told sometimes.
Yes.
Once in a while.
Yeah. If you like French onion soup, this is the martini for you.
I just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, neither was I.
That's why we didn't start with that one, because it would have killed your palate completely. But
Now all of a sudden I just want a hunk of bread.
yeah.
I very much want a hunk of bread. And maybe like some melted, like, you're right.
Yeah.
French onion soup all the way.
Yeah.
But really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah. I think if you are somebody that likes a dirty martini and you're willing to be a little adventurous, this is like a great cocktail to try.
And I do enjoy a dirty martini. I think that's the thing, is that I really encourage people to try to go with stuff that maybe they haven't had before. Maybe, it's like if you're going to have 2 drinks tonight, one's your solid. What's the process if somebody tries something and they're just not that into it?
That's another, I think, goes back to hospitality focused. We aren't going to hold that over their heads. We're going to take the cocktail back and make them something they like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the fears, too, about that bridge or on-ramp to cocktail culture, that people get a little like, well, what if I order it? Then I don't, because it's Midwest nice. We are very Midwest polite.
Yes.
In corners of Detroit, to
Yep.
say the least, and Michigan, right? Where it's like, we're just going to take it in. And I really enjoy this. I just was stunned at first because I've never had an alcoholic cocktail that tasted like this before. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that idea of hospitality, I think we all know that it's uncomfortable to stand up for yourself and say, I don't like this, but that's going back to the community focus of our bar, is that we want you to tell us if you don't like it. I don't want you to spend $15 on a drink that you hate and never come back,
Okay, so I would be remiss if I didn't ask kind of around the table, what's next for Kiesling and everything that's happening? Because these are some very tasty cocktails. This is the present. We've talked about the past, and now we're talking about the present, and let's talk about the future.
Well-
what are kind of your thoughts?
We've had a really great couple of years. And last year we were nominated for one of the top cocktail bars in the U.S. from Tales of the Cocktail. And we're nominated again this year, which has just been amazing in terms of not only the recognition for the team and all of the incredible work that they've done, the team Allison has built, that Jonny is it's just been so cool to see this. But also one of the things that we've wanted to do collaboratively is bring other top hospitality organizations into Detroit to learn from them, so our staff can learn from them, so our hospitality community can learn from them, but also to show them this awesome city that we call home. We've been doing collaborations since the very beginning, and when we were kind of coming out of COVID, we were talking about okay, Allison, how do you want to start this again? When are you ready? What do we
Yeah.
Whenever we're ready to do it, let's do it. With her leadership, with these doors opening from Tales of the Cocktail, with the city kind of coming back online in such a beautiful way. It's been amazing inviting other bars here. We've got Taverna coming up from Mexico City at the end of the month. We've got La Factoria coming up from San Juan in June. We've got Attaboy coming in from Nashville at the end of the summer. So I think in terms of the present and future, it is learn as much as possible, keep building our hospitality community, keep showing other people how amazing this city is. But I think it's also really, how do you strengthen that community where it's quality hospitality, and in a way where it's all ships rise together. For me, it's really how do we bring this community together?
Well, and the truth is that, you're going to have your regulars, of course, but even your regulars, they're going to go to different bars. They're going to go experience different things. You talk about Tales of the Cocktail. I think about a friend of the show, Kevin Peterson, over at Castelli. He does some really interesting things with cocktails and has a new book that's out. There's so many interesting things, and that's part of being part of this scene, right? That Kiesling is a valuable part of, where it's there's so many different experiences to have, but I'm going to keep coming back here because there's always something new, or there's something familiar, or there's something where I feel like I can just have a good time. and enjoy, right? And it sets itself apart. And I wonder, does any of that help set your bar apart? There's this whole thing about how tough it is to make it, and it's tough to make it anywhere. I think about that New York song, right? Like, if you make it in New York, you can make it anywhere or whatever, right? I feel like that's the way it is in Detroit, too. Because I'll hear stories about success, and I'll hear people are like, oh, this is really hard. I have a feeling it's really hard, but you also can find success. I definitely think that you embrace that there's challenges, too.
There's 100% challenges. We meet about the numbers every week, and not just the numbers. It's how are we doing? What's coming up? How's staff doing? How are the drinks performing? How are people feeling? And you have to be close to the numbers. It is hard. Prices have gone up so much since COVID. And the amount that you can raise the prices and not alienate your community, it's such a fine line to walk. But then it's also beyond that, I think kind of staying close to the strategy. Why do we exist? And it's to be a gathering place for everyone in this community. And as long as we are nurturing our staff, giving back to the community and creating that space, that to me is success. But of course, we still have to pay, salaries and all the things. So those two, like the balance between that is hard, but honestly, it's less hard if you know what your North Star is. It makes decisions so much easier. It makes collaboration so much easier.
It's good to know who you are. At least I find that running this.
Yeah.
You know who you are. And if you know who you are, then it's easier to say no to things that you aren't. And I think that, and I'm not going to speak about anything specifically or any place specifically, but I think where people get in the weeds is when they have an identity crisis.
100%, because the numbers will always be hard, right?
It never stops.
And it never stops. But if you're like, well, this is who we are, we can think of 1,000 ways to collaborate with people in the community to keep doing more of that, more of what we do. And that makes it so much easier to find the light,
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate the three of you because this has been a great conversation. Ashley Davidson, co-owner of Kiesling and Milwaukee Caffe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jonny Brill, general manager of Kiesling, Milwaukee and Caffe.
Thank you.
And Allison Everitt, bar manager of Kiesling. Thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you, Jared.
Ashley, where can people go if they want to learn more?
KieslingDetroit.com or on Instagram. We are very active on Instagram.
At Kiesling Detroit.
Jer, can I pitch a nickname for Norris Howard before we end?
Please.
The Baron of Brightmoor. I don't know if that's been used or not.
Ooh, I like Baron of Brightmoor better than Prince. Although, is that a step down?
Perhaps. I don't.
He's got an ego.
I think
I
there was.
love him.
Yes,
like
yes.
a brother.
I don't know what. There's maybe a Habsburgian thing where a baron was higher than a prince. I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
I'll
and
look
Baron
it up
of
for
Brightmoor
you.
really works together very well.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I like the alliteration.
With that, I am Jer Stays. Thank you so much for listening to your Daily Detroit. Feedback, as always, dailydetroit@gmail.com. And in case you don't remember it, remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.
All you need is a focus and a story to